Alexander, and this is my podcast, Unveiling Journeys. If you've been hanging out with us, this is the deal. I get to meet some of the coolest people I've ever met in my life, and I've decided to no longer be quiet, and I want to share them with the world. That's what the podcast is all about, and I get to hear their story. So here's the deal. If you know me and you're thinking, oh my gosh, you need to know this cool person, I think you need to know this cool person, let's share all of these amazing people. And that is exactly how I got to meet Aaron, who you get to hang out with today. I said, hey, who else in my life or your life do I need to know? And then we got referred to each other. With that, I'm going to bring him on so that way we can learn about what he's doing right now. It's amazing, incredible stuff, really giving back to so many great people and helping people launch businesses amongst his own businesses. And I'm going to let him go into that. So welcome, Aaron. Thank you for your time today. And tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing.
Thanks for having me, Tiffany. Well, yeah, so I've had one heck of a hero's journey, I think, to use a literature term, to get to where I'm at today. I have started 13 companies over the last 25 years, 7 franchises and six of my own. And I'm very much an accidental entrepreneur. Currently, I have 3 different projects that I'm working on. I've been working as a franchise broker and consultant, or matchmaker, for over 7 years now. I've actually been involved in franchising for about 25 years in total. But a franchise consultant is basically somebody who helps individuals who are at an impasse in their career. Maybe they've been laid off, or they've hit the kind of ceiling about as far as they want to go in their corporate organization without having to completely sacrifice their life and their family in order to get to that C-level. People that have realized that I just want to be my own boss. I may realize it's not going to be easier than working for somebody else, but I want to be in control of my destiny in my life. So I help them go through a discovery journey of who they are, what matters to them, what their interests are, what their budget is, things about their geography and local competitive environment, and get to the bottom of their why.
Yeah.
And I match them up with franchise brands that make sense, pitch them and get them through that journey to figure out if there's actually one that they should buy. Similarly, for people who already have an existing company or business and maybe things are on autopilot because the business is kicking ass, maybe they got great management in place and they're feeling, as the founder, I'm kind of bored. I want to find something else to do. If they want to find a complement to that business because they have a great customer base, or if they want to find something that's a complete hedge against what they're currently doing, I can help them find a franchise investment that meets those various criteria. And then the last piece of the franchise work that I do is companies that have been killing it in their local marketplace and are at that point where they're ready to grow and trying to figure out, does it make sense for us to take like the best members of our team and have them move to a remote office 90 minutes away and open up a new location there, or a new service center there, or whatever the business may be, sign a new lease, new personal guarantees, borrow more money? Or is that a point at which it makes sense, could we franchise this and let other people invest their time, their money, their personal credit, and be really committed to something because it's their business, but we show them the ropes and we guide them along the way. And I help them take their business into the world of franchising and work with them long-term to try and make them successful. So that's one piece. The second piece, I owned, as I mentioned, businesses for many years. And one in particular, I had a service provider to me that solved all of my customer experience and digital marketing problems. And put me in a position about 5 years into that relationship where I was able to sell that business for more than I would have expected, because they very positively impacted not only my top line revenue, but my profitability. And about a year before I sold my business, they decided to turn their business into a franchise, which is a little unusual because business to business services is not the most typical type of franchise system you'd hear of. And they asked me to join their board of advisors. And so I did that and got to know everyone there so well that I too decided to become a franchisee. So now I basically help companies that are trying to improve their inbound and outbound customer relationship process, whether it's phone calls or lead generation or event confirmation or appointment confirmation type of stuff. We have a domestic team that does all that kind of work. We do lots of lead generation for B2B companies that need to fill their calendars with prospects, digital marketing, and we have some very unique stuff that no one else has in the retail segment. So there's that piece. And then my most recent project, which is the one that I'll be frankly honest, I'm kind of most passionate about because it's aligned with a lifetime of sensibilities, is that I'm a bit of a tree hugger. I'm that guy who will purposely rinse out plastic containers that my family puts in the garbage and I put them in the recycle bin. Even though I know a lot of that stuff doesn't really get recycled, I've always believed that we can really save the planet if we as individuals actually care about our consumption and actually care about what we do with the stuff that we use as part of our day-to-day life process. And so I've got an old mentor and good friend and colleague who's been the CEO of 9 different companies named Max Lambright. And he has aligned himself with an organization that has billions and billions of dollars that they're investing into a variety of different industries, but a lot of it's going into clean energy. And solar has been, kind of all the rage, and it's coming down in price. But the problem is that solar only produces power about anywhere from 8 to 16 hours a day, depending upon where you are in the country and what time of year it is.
Yeah.
So they're working on the wind side for wind energy generation, and wind turbines, the kind that we're working with, produce power all the time. So I'm in the Midwest, although I'm not limited to the Midwest. I'm trying to help farmers who are basically sitting on land that maybe generational transfers have happened, and the kids are just like, I don't want to farm this land anymore. Or a lot of big open space and hunting land and prairie land that the family has got 100 acres and they don't know what to do with it. Wind power is something that is nuts in terms of the power it can generate, the revenue it can generate for the people when we do a long-term land lease, and it can create generational wealth while also providing clean energy for your local community and utility. And so I'm on the hunt for people that are interested in parsing out from 5 to 200 acres of their property and devoting it to wind and creating literally 6 and 7 figure type of incomes off of their property with wind energy. So those are the 3 things I'm currently working on.
I love well, there's so many fun things because we've had several conversations and I get so excited about all of them separately because I think to myself, oh gosh, the first part of this, like, oh man, I've always considered, man, what if I just got a franchise? And you consider all the things that are franchises. I'm like, wow, I could do this, I could do that, and what that looks like. And then I get to Googling it and I'm like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. But there's someone like you that could be that middleman for somebody to not let them get to the part where they're overwhelmed and then they give up on it. Like if people only knew that you are just one of these people that is pro them to be able to help figure out what that looks like, that's incredible. And then to be on the board where you're doing your own franchise and then you have the company that's helping solve all these business solutions. And then we just recently had a conversation about the wind side. And I am in California, in Central California. And when you drive all over, all you see are these big, ugly, and you hear about the ones that are these massive fans and that they're not recyclable and that they're spewing oil. And you were like, no, it's this kind of fan. It's not that. And I thought, now I'm interested because I don't think they're utilizing the wind properly here with the turbines that are ugly all over the countryside in Central California.
And they're a permanent blight, those giant 300-foot turbines.
Yes.
I mean, they have to go an insane amount of feet into the ground, rebar, concrete. I mean, it's literally impossible to remove those foundations when eventually those turbines fail or need to be decommissioned. Yeah, the products that we're working with are 30 feet high. They're 8 by 8. They sit on a 12-foot by 12-foot concrete pad that is never more than 5 feet deep, usually more like 2 or 3. And when the project is done, they can be completely removed and recycled or reutilized, and the land can be returned back to the way it was before we ever started the project. And they move at 2.5 miles an hour, and they can withstand hurricane force winds. So they move all the time. Those giant turbines, they typically don't start until 17 miles an hour, and they have to be started with a gas engine. And then they typically have to be braked at around 34 or 35 miles an hour, because if they start spinning too fast, those blades can actually fly off. Then you can put one every, I think it's 500 yards. So you basically have like one every acre and a half, whereas we can put as many as 30 of our wind turbines on a single acre. I mean, the amount of megawatts we can produce on a single acre is bonkers in comparison.
Yeah, for sure.
It's also not a total blight on the land. It's 30 feet high. It doesn't kill any wildlife because these things don't hurt birds, and they're soundless. So it's a nice solution. And frankly, they can even go on the land where some of the giant turbines are, because there's more than enough clear space between the turbine blades and these things to still put them there. So
that's incredible.
It's been very fun, because to me, it's a win-win-win for everybody. You get this clean energy. The landowner doesn't have to sell their land, but gets now something that is going to be radically more valuable. I mean, in Wisconsin, where I live, premium farmland is leased for $750 a year per acre. We're able to generate more than 100 times that income, more than 100 times that income per year off of that acre with wind energy. So if you think about that, those unit economics for a farm family, that is like, okay, well, we can maybe sell some of this acreage for building houses if anybody even wants it, but then it's a one-time payment. We're going to pay them that kind
Yeah.
of every single year for as long as 30 years if they want a long-term land lease. So to me, I don't know. I
Yeah.
love the project because it's
Hmm.
one of those things that feels too good to be true. But there is something to be said about being involved in something that actually does good and is a little too good to be true, but it's actually not, because we pay for everything because we got so much funding. I've never been involved in something that has funding that's in the B's of billions. And so for me, it's been very exciting to start getting involved in something like that. The opportunities are
I
endless.
love that.
So whether you're in the mountainside plain ranch lands of Colorado, or you're in the boring dust bowls of Oklahoma, or you've got Iowa cornfields that you're just like, okay, nobody wants more corn. Um, we can do projects. You don't have to do it, with all your land. Just 20 acres will be life changing.
Yeah. Is it best for somebody that reaches out? They have like US land that's available?
Uh, yeah, technically, I mean, right now we're focusing on the United States. I mean, I guess could we do Canada? I imagine we could. I'd have to just ask the team. No one's asked me yet. There
Yeah.
seems to be so much
Yeah.
opportunity here that I haven't thought about Canada.
I love that. And when there's so much opportunity here, it's like, wait a minute, we're solving energy problems for what we need solved for here. Why would we go elsewhere? Like I'm solving housing crises, homeowner stuff. Like, why would I go anywhere else when we have so much deal flow here? I want to solve that before I move on somewhere else. Okay, here's what I want to ask you. This is so many incredible things you're involved in. How did you get here? Like, where are you from? What did you go to school for?
So my degree is in international relations with a focus on the international political economy of the European Union. So I studied the European Union before it actually became a thing. I mean, it was
Yeah.
it was a long time in the making, but I graduated from college in 1992. And what I really wanted to be is I wanted to become a diplomat, work in the Foreign Service for the State Department. Little did I know just how hard it is, but I got lucky. I did an internship during college here in Wisconsin for the university, or for the state of Wisconsin's Department of Agriculture and International Trade, because that's where the International Trade Division sits, because we're a big ag state. And I got to do some really cool stuff with hosting groups from Soviet Russia, groups from China, Lithuania, Latvia, and countries like that, and from folks from Africa. And I was kind of like the liaison who helped plan their trips. And then after college, I wrote a letter, because back then there really was hardly even email, and I think I sent it as a fax to the head of the Commercial Services Division, which is like basically the largest commercial services office outside of the United States, in London. And I asked him for an internship and explained my experience, and I got a response. And so I found myself graduated from college, and within a matter of months, I had moved to London and was working directly in the Foreign Service office. And I was the only intern up there, because all the other interns didn't have experience, and they were literally in the basement making phone calls trying to get people to come to like expos that the US was hosting. I worked directly with Foreign Service officers who were trying to connect American businesses with potential partners in the UK, Ireland, and Scotland and Wales. And it was really, really cool. So that was what I studied. But then I came back, took the Foreign Service exam once, and was like, oh, that was hard. Did not do even remotely well enough to pass to the next phase, and took again and didn't do a whole lot better. And I realized that there's a reason why the Foreign Service and the State Department is filled with people who have basically are legacy Ivy League students. These are people that are well connected, incredibly well read and educated. I didn't have much of a chance as a country kid from Wisconsin, but it's where I started, and that's what I studied.
Yeah. That is an incredible. I can't even imagine, like, man, this is what you went to school for, what you knew you were going to do. And at what point did you feel like, well, okay, I didn't pass this test, I'm going to do that? Like, what did you transition to from leaving that?
Well, I should add the reason why I got there. I mean, again, I grew up out in the country of Wisconsin. I mean, one of the weird things in now my 54th year on this planet, I would say 80% of the people that I went to high school with still live here.
Yeah.
People just won't leave Wisconsin. And a lot of friends I have never left the country. It's just one of those things, for whatever reason, there's a contentment, I suppose, that people have being here. I got the opportunity to be an exchange student in high school twice, to Germany, just for a month, but I lived with the family. And that was the impetus that got me into wanting to do international trade studies and moving abroad. And my brother actually did the same thing not long after I did. He moved to Greece and we traveled together for a while that summer. And just our family had really become kind of an international family, despite being, I mean, my mom and my dad both grew up on farms. I mean, these are not people who you would expect would be traveling the world, but they always took us along on these trips. So that's what begot that. So I came back during the recession of, during the Clinton administration of 93, 94, I think it was. And I couldn't find work. So I ended up getting a job with Sears Roebuck in their national management training program. That is a company that deserves to be out of business. They did not keep up with the times, but they did move me to Seattle and they moved me to the San Francisco Bay Area, which was pretty awesome. And I ended up getting involved in the pre-internet technology industry in the mid 90s in and around Silicon Valley, San Francisco, and the East Bay, and worked for a couple of different .coms in 99 and 2000 and in 2001, when all these huge investment organizations who've been throwing millions of dollars at kids who hadn't even graduated college but knew how to code and build websites realized that they were never going to get their money back, and that whole world imploded.
Yeah.
With 5% of those companies actually surviving to this day. Everybody lost their jobs, especially people like me who are in business development. I had just gotten married, just bought a house, and ironically, my wife at the time was getting most of her work through my referrals, people that I was meeting through my business stuff. She was an advertising and design art director. And so, as a first-time mortgage holder and now suddenly unemployed individual, I think I asked my wife, when was the last time you wrote an invoice? She's like, I don't know. I've been so busy. It's been like 3 months. Because I was making enough money. We didn't necessarily have to rely on her income. And so I started writing invoices. And before I knew it, I was calling more people. And 8 months later, we had more clients than we could handle and found ourselves leasing a space. And we ended up growing that agency to being one of the fastest growing companies in the San Francisco Bay Area 3 years in a row.
Wow.
Now we were the smallest one on the list, but our growth trajectory was ridiculous. I mean,
Right.
1,000+% type stuff. But we also became a victim of our growth. We grew too fast, took on too much payroll. And then when the economy tanked in 2007, 2008 because of the banking crisis, we were really focused on luxury goods, luxury experiences, luxury real estate. And of course, spending on that kind of stuff came to a halt. So our agency kind of collapsed as a result of that. And we got into our first franchise at that point too. We had an all natural bath and body products retail store and day spa that we owned in Alameda, California. That was very fun. And actually that did very well, but that became a victim of the agency collapse.
Yeah. People were spending less money because they were like, wait, I have an adjustable rate mortgage.
Yeah. And as part of that, if I may add, one of the things that I think, I think maybe part of the overall theme of like, how did you get here?
Yeah.
There's a piece that's important, I think, related to my story that some people might be able to relate to, and maybe not, but it's this idea that where tenacity comes from, where this idea of like never wanting to give up, even in a bullheaded way, because it's definitely come back to bite me by not wanting to give up on something that actually clearly I should have cut the rope on, or cut bait on, or whatever term makes the most sense. I was diagnosed with a bone disease when I was in second grade. And it was a degenerative bone disease that ironically my mother had called Perthes disease. And it's basically where, in my case, the round part of the ball of my hip socket, basically its blood supply got cut off because of some viral infection, and it broke into multiple pieces. Whoa. And there was really no way to repair it because I'm too young. You can't do a hip replacement. And back then, hip replacements were still kind of rudimentary because this is like 1977. And so I ended up spending 3 years on crutches, and formative years, second, third, fourth, and got off of them in fifth grade. Mm-hmm. And I went to a country school, and so I'm hanging out with really tough farm kids, and I got taunted pretty relentlessly. They would steal my crutches. I'd have to hop around because I couldn't put weight in my leg. That ended after about a couple of years when I began to realize that crutches can be great weapons. So lots of people paid the price with their shins. Wing nuts. Turns out wing nuts on crutches really hurt when you hit somebody in the shins, and they started leaving me alone after that. I ended up having a bone tumor when I was 12 in the same leg, but unrelated. Had surgery on that. So another year of restrictions. And then I came back when I was 20 in college. And what I was ever told is that they weren't sure they were going to ever be able to actually save my leg during the first two experiences. Thankfully, my parents never told me, because I probably would have freaked out. But that stuff, that experience, built in me this whole, like, don't give up. You are tough. You can do this kind of stuff. And that has been a really great piece. At times, not necessarily always great, as an entrepreneur, because I've had 13 companies that I have owned and operated over the last 25 years. And there's a reason, because not all of them worked.
Yeah.
But I pushed through, and I've made some successful by kind of sheer will, hard work, not necessarily the story of like working 120 hours a week. No, I've never done crazy stuff like that. But trying to think outside of the box, trying to be problem solver, asking for help, which is something that, man, most entrepreneurs are not good at doing.
Right.
For help. And so, but that's ultimately how I got there, was because of all those experiences. Growing up taught me to be tough, taught me to not be afraid.
Mm-hmm.
I brought it up before we started recording that I feel like my life has been nothing but a series of forks in the road. And I think I've almost always chose the most difficult fork, not necessarily intentionally, but I've never taken the easy route.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
what were some of the things that like kept pressing you forward? Like, was there like a why? Like, man, why is this so important to me? Other than just like not failing, right?
Yeah, it's definitely I'm not going to fail. I don't want to fail. I don't want to be thought of as a failure. There's certainly that. There's the process of building. You really can generate a lot of pride. And some people say, oh, that's all ego. I don't know. For me, I don't see it that way. I mean, sure, yeah, of course, there's some ego that goes along with being an entrepreneur and trying to create or run a successful company. But the ability to look back at what you've done and what you've built and employing people, and that the people like working for you, they tell you that you're a great boss. I've been told that a lot throughout my career.
Yeah.
And to me, that's why that's worth it. It's just the idea that you've created a culture where people feel valued, and you're able to pay them a living wage, and you're doing something that people want and need. That's usually been my primary driving force. But one of the things that I also learned, getting back to that idea of tenacity and not giving up, and this is, I think, a thing that a lot of entrepreneurs don't really think about, certainly don't respect about themselves, their own bodies, is that you will break, and break in ways that you wouldn't have necessarily expected. So in 2006-07, my wife and I at the time had these two businesses together, but we were getting divorced because we just found that we were better friends and not even that great of business partners, but it just didn't make sense to stay married. And the economy was collapsing. We were losing money hand over fist, and I got really stressed out, and I ended up having a heart attack at 36.
Wow.
And I don't have heart disease. I'm not overweight. I was exercising, probably drinking a bit more than I should. But I had what's called Takotsubo syndrome, or more commonly called broken heart syndrome.
Wow.
And I spent 5 days in the hospital. The doctors couldn't really quite figure out what the heck was wrong with me, because I didn't have all the traditional issues. But I almost died. And in fact, I knew somebody who was the primary financier and benefactor of one of our clients who had a bunch of restaurants in wine country, and he died of the same thing, walking out to his car about 6 months later. And so why does that matter? Balance. Most entrepreneurs don't understand balance. They don't respect balance. They don't understand and respect making time for their family, because this can become an obsession.
Yeah.
It's almost like an addiction, I think, in some ways, for some people, trying to build and create a successful company. And you'll sacrifice, put in time, put in hours, put in money. And I really, back then, I finally realized you got to start asking yourself, why? Why are you doing this so hard? Why are you putting in so much time and effort? You're killing yourself. And ironically or unironically, I found myself back in that same spot in the last 2 years, 20 years later, or 18 years later. And I'm going through some very complicated times at the moment, just because of the way things have gone with a couple of business investments. I successfully sold a company, and we've had a child that's been struggling with brain cancer. And I took that money and invested it in 4 other companies that were supposed to be more passive and I hired people to run the companies. And of the 4 things I invested in, only 1 actually went positively. And so it's been intensely stressful. I find myself on the cusp of getting divorced again, unintentionally, because I have been, in many regards, quite absent. I've been too focused on trying to save what I created, these self-inflicted wounds. And I'm learning the lesson again that you've got one life to live, and
Yep.
no one's going to write in your epitaph or write put out a eulogy of how much Aaron Bakken worked his ass off for his family and how much money he made. I mean,
Yeah.
they're not. I mean, they might talk about that, but that's not the stuff that matters.
Mm-mm.
So I find myself again being reminded how important it is to find balance, making time for your family, and making time for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I've probably gone out and seen friends 6 times in the last 14 months, separate from my own family and immediate family members. I mean, I have not invested in myself.
Yeah.
And that is something that I think is so easy to do as an entrepreneur, because you believe the sacrifice is worth it, and people will
Absolutely.
respect the sacrifice, and people will look at you and think you're successful because of how hard you worked.
Mm. You're
And
preaching to the choir over here. I have to tell my girlfriends, like, you got to pencil me in my calendar. Otherwise, I just mow my life right over assuming we're going to hang out on this day. It's like, no, you got to make them a priority, even if it's as silly as like putting it in your calendar so that you don't work over that. And
that's actually what you have
it's,
to do, because you will find a
yeah,
way to fill that spot if you don't reserve it.
hands down, hands down.
Yeah,
So this is a,
my wife asked me a few years back. She's like, you never can shut off work when you come downstairs for dinner. You used to cook dinners all the time, and now you're too busy. And then you keep picking up your phone, or you take a phone call while you're having dinner. She's like, would you please be present?
yeah,
By the time I finally listened and started blocking off my calendar and actually being present, everyone else in the family had stopped. And so
yeah,
now I'm the guy who's sitting at the table without my device, and everyone else has their devices because they're so used to me doing it.
yeah.
And so, it's part of how I am where I am. And, again, self-inflicted wounds. But all the things that I have learned in my 25 years of owning companies and doing things right and doing things wrong is you got to have balance, and you got to make time for your friends and family. You got to make them feel like they're a priority too. It's so easy
Mm-hmm.
not to, because you believe I'm providing, I'm building an empire, I'm going to be successful, and I'm going to give us this great lifestyle. Well, it doesn't matter if you're not there to be part of it. Or it
Yeah.
doesn't matter if you're there, but you're not part of it because you're always checked out, taking that phone call at 9 o'clock at night from that asshole client who can't ever find any boundaries, right?
Gosh, I know. The one thing that I see that you have that I appreciate is that you care so much, and that sometimes you might have a boundary of like, man, I care so much for a client, I care so much for my family, I care so much for my business, I care so much for everyone else's business. Because when you're trying to help people identify what they want to have, right? You're caring just as much as they are eventually going to care about their own little baby. And so you're just in a rebalancing of your life right now. And I think everybody feels that so important. Like, we appreciate like the people that are listening. Oh my gosh, you care so much. If anybody was to say, oh my gosh, I want to get to know you because I know that you would help me find the right fit as to what it is that I want to do, whether it's like a service that their
Yeah.
company could use your business as services that you provide with company that you represent, or somebody's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know such a thing as a franchise consultant existed. How do I even find you? It's like, you have found the right person that cares so deeply for where it is, the direction that you want to go, and to be able to reach out and connect, you found the right person. It just
Thank
is what it is. That's why some of the most incredible people I've met, they're the first ones I'm like, hey, you come on my podcast, I want to introduce the world to you and make sure everybody friends you. And by all means, everybody, if you are listening to this, friend me, connect with me on LinkedIn. You're going to friend Aaron on LinkedIn. And what is the website that I would have everybody go to so that way they can check out all the stuff that you've got going on?
Well, the best one is franchiseinvestmentadvisor.com. Or if
Perfect. I love that.
that's complicated, you can just do my name, aaronbakken.com, AARONBAKKEN.com. That's my franchise related piece. And through there, you can reach me and talk to me about all the B2B business services stuff that I'm involved in, as well as the wind energy project that I'm very excited about. So that's probably the best way to reach me. One of the things I
Oh
wanted to
yeah.
say is there's been an interesting shift in the world of franchise consultants. When I first started this 7 years ago, and before that, I'd been an in-house franchise developer, and all throughout that time, a franchise owner. It used to be that the only people who did franchise consulting were people like me that had a lot of franchise experience, either the corporate side, owning, or even being a franchisor. It suddenly started to become like a real estate agent stuff where anybody and their brother can do it because it's even easier because you don't need to have a certification to even be a franchise consultant.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of hacks that are out there these days who are just buying lists and cold calling like crazy or cold
Wow.
emailing and getting prospects, but they don't understand anything about how to
Yeah.
own, operate, and run a business. And more importantly, what kind of lifestyle shift and changes you're going to experience as a business owner. Because I hate to tell you, it's not going to be easier than working for somebody else. Never.
No, not you're stepping into someone else's rules they've invented and all of their systems, and franchise really isn't, depending on which one you're getting into, you kind of need to step into it yourself. It's not usually 100% like, yeah, just go for it and type of thing. But
Right.
um what
Yeah.
are some of the like the most important one-liners that you've carried yourself through or that you love to share with people?
Well, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. To me, is you have to continuously be prepared to evolve. Uh, it's the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. It's the same general kind of adage. I happen to be maybe a bit of a bright, shiny object kind of guy. I'm like, oh, look at that. And when it comes to new ideas and new business things, I get really excited about building. But the other thing, so I have a former business partner, and it's a gentleman who I really, truly don't care for because of how he handled our business as the primary owner and the way in which that business ended up dissolving. But he would say this all the time: trust but verify. Trust
Yeah.
but verify. And there's really something to that because I would say that some of my biggest failures in business have been when I've trusted people that I knew and I let them do their due diligence before I invested in a business and
Yes.
didn't do it myself. I trusted, but I didn't verify. And
Hmm.
it turns out that they didn't do anything, or at least nothing close to enough to actually have justified the investment that I had made. And so
Wow.
trust and verify is another really good one for me. And I think the last thing is that, in order to love other people and be loved by other people, you need to first love yourself. We entrepreneurs in general, I think, we have a tendency to be masochistic, and we're the worst bosses in the world when it's us. Meaning, what I expect from myself as a boss is unbelievably, stupidly unrealistic in comparison
Hmm.
to what I would ever ask of anybody else. So you
Right.
got to treat yourself with some kindness and give yourself some grace and realize you cannot do it all.
Yeah.
And one of the last things, maybe it isn't a saying, but I had a coach I was working with a few years back who helped me sit down and figure out what my actual hourly rate was in terms of looking at my income versus how many hours I worked. And when we came down to the equation that my time is worth $450 an hour, he's like, so why are you still mowing your lawn? Why
Ooh.
are you still washing or cleaning your house? Why are you still doing your own bookkeeping? Why? Think of the
Right.
time you're wasting versus the money you could be making if you were hiring somebody else to do those things and putting that time into more of your work, or taking that time and putting it back into your family.
This is so good. Literally, you've left the audience with a homework assignment. I think everybody right now needs to go sit and figure out your like dollar per hour of when you're actually doing your highest and best use work for yourself when you're getting that return. Just exactly that. Because even like going to go mow your lawn, you can have somebody go do it. Have more time back with your family, right?
Correct. Yeah,
Hmm.
the people that mow our yard, which is big, it's $65 a visit.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
mean, and it used to take me 2.5 hours. That's 2.5 hours I can spend with my kids in the weekends.
Exactly. And it's really more than that. If you're like weeding and I do it because I like being outside, but my yard's like a thimble. So it's like, all right, I'm done. So, oh my gosh. Hey, I am so grateful that we got to hang out today and that I get to hear your story. I get to share it with so many people. Everybody, do me a favor, go to the links down below and follow Aaron. Connect with him. Go check out his website and be inspired from some of this amazing advice that he shared with us today. And you guys have a great day. Thank you, Aaron, again, and I will chat with you soon. Bye, everybody.
Appreciate the audience, Tiffany.
Thank you so much. Look, we finished like just in the nick of time. Hopefully, if you have your next appointment at like 1 minute,
No, my
just a random call at once.